This is a series of boards I'm getting ready to glue up. And you can see I've got them laid out on my clamps here. I've got 3 clamps kind of equally spaced. This is ultimately going to be for a hope chest. And I've got the boards laid out in order of color and grain direction. And I previously marked that by putting the V and then my numbers between those boards. Sometimes though, a glue up like this, because there's so many boards, can be somewhat complicated. It may be easier to glue up just 2 of those boards, then glue up 2 more, and then glue those 2 sub-assemblies together. Here's the process for gluing up these 2 boards. First, make sure that you have all your clamps set up in the correct order that you want them and kind of spread close to the wood. Make sure you've got water, the rags that you're going to use to wipe the glue off, and in this case I'm going to use some yellow glue. Start by spreading the glue on this board edge in a fairly thin bead. Now to spread this, I can do it a couple of different ways. I can try first with a credit card. Real light pressure will spread that glue evenly. Or you may also want to just take your finger and spread that glue the same way. The object is to evenly spread the glue and make sure that there's enough glue on that board surface. Now, the reason to have all of your clamps and water together is that we don't want to waste a lot of time once we've spread this glue to put those boards together. This glue is relatively fast acting. In just a few minutes it'll start to tack, so we want to make sure that our boards are put together in a timely manner. So there's the glue spread. Set the boards down, realign them with those marks that we previously put on them. Snug up your clamps. And now I like to begin at the outside edge. Make sure that my joint is nice and even together and put just a little pressure on that clamp. As soon as I see the squeeze out coming across that opening, I know I've got plenty of pressure. I'll go to the middle and again make sure that that joint is nice and even and clamp that one up, and then finally go to the end. Now one little tip here too is that if you noticed your end rising just a little bit, in fact this is a perfect indication of it here, it's a great idea just add a clamp to this side. That'll keep that even. We don't want excessive pressure on the board because excessive pressure will actually force that board to pop up. So just enough pressure is plenty. You can see that the glue on there now has got these individual beads of glue on the top and the bottom, and that's excellent. And now it's time to remove it. So we'll take our rag here and dip it in a little water. And by just pulling up a little bit of this glue at a time, we're going to work our way down the board surface. We're slowly walking down the board edge. I'm going to kind of keep moving this to get a nice clean edge so that I'm picking up the glue and pulling it off the surface. And now I'll take my rag and go back to the bucket, rinse this guy well, wring out just a little bit of that water, and now I'll go back and actually remove any of that excess glue. This moisture doesn't hurt the glue joint at all. All we're doing is taking that glue off the surface. And now I can almost wring this out and finally take that excess moisture off the board. Now, of course, I would repeat that same procedure, wiping the glue off on the underside of this board with a wet rag. Now, there's another way to remove glue, and it's allowing it to dry to a scab or maybe popcorn consistency, and using a razor blade like this, actually run right down the face of the board, allowing those pieces of glue to pop right off of there. Now, one of the last things is, once this board has been glued up and there's a little bit of pressure on these edges, sometimes the edges of the boards may slip. It's called glue creep. So one of the ways to greatly reduce it is to take a square like this and just make sure that your clamps are square to the glue up. You'll see it here, and here's another way to show it here. And the last thing, of course, we can use our square for is just to run down the edge of the wood and make sure that both those board faces are nice and flat. Now, I'm not going to have any trouble getting this board ready for a final finish. One final tip. In case some of that glue got a chance to dry and I didn't get it off, maybe I missed it or it was under the clamp, it's very hard to do that with a sander. The sandpaper on that will actually clog because the glue will get stuck in there. It's much easier to use a glue scraper. And by pulling down on it a little bit, actually scrape that glue right off of there. You see that the line is nice and clear. It removed all of that glue just perfectly. You may have noticed I used yellow glue on this glue up. And the reason I did it is because it's fairly simple. There's only 2 boards and 1 edge. But I would probably have switched to a white glue, allowing a lot more open time if I were doing a more complicated glue up. All those individual parts need time, and I get some more realignment by using white glue. Yellow glue works great for this. You may want to think about white glue for those more complicated glue ups. Just as there's no one size fits all, there's no one glue for all woodworking applications. Here's a grouping of glues that are available to the average woodworker. First is a quick set epoxy, whose set times range anywhere from 1 to 4 minutes. And secondly, a long set epoxy, and the set times on there can go up to almost an hour. Those are 2-part mixes. There is hardener in one side and resin in the other. You squirt out a little bit, it provides an equal amount of both. You mix those together with a toothpick or something, and those set within the times I've listed. The next is cyanoacrylate glue. This is a real fast-setting glue, usually used by turners. When their wood begins to split just a little bit, this glue will help keep those joints together. Here's polyurethane glue. It's a glue used mainly for projects that are going to be exposed to weather. This glue has a tendency to fill small gaps in joints, so they don't have to be quite as tight as they would be with some of the other glues. Here is a water-based waterproof glue. This particular glue is easily washed off your fingers, unlike the polyurethane glues, but doesn't have the gap-filling properties. Works very well with projects that are going to be exposed to moisture. And this is the most popular of all glues. It's yellow glue, used by woodworkers for almost all their projects. And lastly, we have white glue. This is an excellent glue for use on more complicated glue ups. Its prolonged set time will allow a lot more alignment of parts before the glue actually grabs. Now this is a grouping of all the glues normally available to most woodworkers. Use the one that's most appropriate for your project.